Okay, so the next thing we're going to need to do is we're going to roll out some clay. Now, I'm using just regular Sculpey. You can use Super Sculpey, you can use Super Sculpey Firm. I've used all those different kinds. I just happen to have some Sculpey on me right now, and I just want to use it up, so I'm going to be making a nice sheet of this, rolling it out. Now, you can use an acrylic rolling pin, or I'm going to run mine through this clay machine here to make it all very consistent in one length. One length, one thickness is what I really meant to say. But one thickness. I'm going to roll it through here. And even if you don't have these, if you don't have a rolling pin or you don't have a clay machine, roll out by hand. Or just take like a ballpoint pen, like a flat pen, and roll it out just to give it a little bit more of an even thickness. Okay, so I'm going to do that. And we'll cut back and you'll see the flat sheet laid out, and I'll show you how we're going to texture it after. Okay, so here I have a flat sheet of my rolled out Sculpey clay, and what I'm doing now is I'm just taking my square and I'm just squaring up some of the edges. So I just made this perpendicular here, ran my X-Acto blade along it, and now I'm just going to carefully remove the piece that I scored. If I need to roll it through again, I will, but I think that's pretty good. So I know that that side there is square, and let's check the other side. Yeah, that's pretty square right there. So I'm just going to start on this edge, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to measure out my 1 1/4 inch tiles, mini tiles. Now you can use a cutting mat. Like I said, I misplaced mine. So I'm going to do it a different way. I'm just going to use a pencil, because this is Sculpey is white. You can easily draw on your, Sculpey, because it's white, this Sculpey at least. So I'm going to go and I'm just going to mark every 1 1/4 inch. So that's 1, and that's 1/4 inches. I might get a little bit of warping, but that's okay. That's 1 1/4. And since I know that this is square, I can just lay my T-square there and just very gently draw a line, and you can kind of see that it puts a mark through the middle there. So I got 1 1/4 there. Make sure I'm using inches and not centimeters. So the next 1 1/4 would be right about here. 1 1/4 there. Using my square again, square it up. Make my line going down. Perfect. Okay, and I can measure it that way, or I could just use my hobby knife to cut through, which I will do momentarily. But first, I'm going to put in my 1 1/4 inches on this side as well. I'm going to square it. 1 1/4 is here. That's 1 1/4. 1 1/4. I was trying to do some math in my head. That's how many quarters? 5 quarters, right? I should count by quarters. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right there. Perfect. Okay, so I know I have that and that. Now this edge is square. I can bring this all the way across. And it was there, I believe. I'm going to double check that. Didn't look right to me, so I'm just going to double check. Nope, that's right. What did they say? The old adage, measure twice, cut once. One cut. Hence the name of the channel. Do things that you only have to do one stab at them, one cut. Okay, anyways. So we have our basic 1 1/4 tiles here. Now we're going to texture them, okay? So how we texture this is really interesting. You're going to take some aluminum foil, crumpled up into a ball, okay? And what we get is we get all these nice little divots and ridges. And very gently, you're just going to roll it across the surface. And what you should see happening, and you should change your direction, going some forward, backwards. And what you should start seeing is all these little grooves, these pock marks kind of being pressed into the clay. And what that does is it kind of makes it look like rough stone texture. So now we have this nice rough stone texture inside of our clay. If you press too hard, you'll pierce all the way through the clay. You don't want that. So just nice and light, you're just kind of rolling it along the surface. You can kind of take pieces and just kind of do a little bit of stamping around it if you want to add a little bit more texture. It's perfectly okay that it crosses those lines. In fact, you want it. It makes it more natural and it looks less manufactured that way. So now you're going to take a sharp hobby knife, and again, using those lines that you had before, you're just going to cut out your tiles. Very nice, very slow. You might get a little bit of pulling, a little bit of warp, but that's okay. Gently pick it up, move on to the next one. If you don't have a T-square, I highly suggest you get one. It is a cheap investment, but it is a worthwhile investment. Couple bucks, and it helps out with a lot of crafting projects. So there we go. You might get a little bit of pinch in the corners, that's okay. And again, I should be cutting this on something that's not my table. But I'm making sure I'm not pressing hard enough to go through all the way to the table and scratch it, hopefully. We'll see later when I pick these up. So again, I'm just going to cut my clay. And then what you notice you have is you have these really nice tiles. I'm going to be gentle about picking them up. Might get a little bit of curling, but that's okay. So now that you have these nice flat 1 1/4 inch tiles, what you need to do now is you need to transfer them to a baking sheet, a cooking sheet, and bake them per the thickness recommended by your the type of polymer clay you're using. It's very tricky to get a handle on how long to cook these for, because you might think that they're too soft and you touch them, they do feel soft, but then after you take them out of the oven and let them cool a little bit, they will harden a little bit more. And it's always better to undercook than to overcook. You don't want your tiles to burn. So cook it, pull them out. If they feel like they need to go in for a little bit longer, go ahead, give them a little bit longer, because they will continue to bake. But once you have all these, throw them in the oven, you will get a whole bunch of tiles like this. Okay? Just white, hard, textured tiles. This one was a little bit burnt. And again, also too, is some of them will start to bubble, and you don't want that, unless you're going for that look, but they start to bubble and come up off of the, they get bowed a little bit when they bake and they burn. So cut them out, make a whole bunch, bake them, and then we get to the next step, which is the painting, the finishing, the fun part. Okay, and I'll see you back here when we do that step.